Have you ever believed something so strongly that you went to extra length just to prove your point? When we return, we will be talking about confirmation bias as soon as I make me a cup of coffee. I'll be seeing you. Hello, and welcome to How Do You Like Your Coffee? I'm your host, Chris, and today we're going to be talking about confirmation bias. Let's explain it a little bit. You know your political views are correct in thinking that the political party of your choice will take this country to new heights, best for the economy, social relations, you know how it goes, and so on. You're confident that home remedies are far better than taking medication. And nobody can tell you that Apple is better than Android, or vice versa, depending. So what do you do to prove that you are right? Do you Google it? Dig it up from an article you read in a Sunday paper or monthly magazine? Maybe you go to Yahoo Answers or ask Alexa or Siri. Most likely you're going to search for answers that will prove that you are right. I mean, after all, why would you want to prove yourself wrong, let alone prove yourself wrong to your family, friends, and coworkers? So, by all means, you will avoid information that may not be in your favor. This is called confirmation bias. It's the tendency to search for favor, recall information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, and all while giving less consideration to alternative possibilities. And don't worry, we all have been there. It's not easy to avoid confirmation bias, especially when you feel so strongly about something. First, everyone has a bias. Before you say me bias, not me, let's take a look at a couple cognitive biases that you may recognize. Maybe not by name, but you will recognize their description. Affect heuristic, according to BusinessInsider.com, is described as, quote, the way people let their emotions color their beliefs about the world, end quote. Sounds close to the post-truth definition. Well, say you're attending a debate between prospective candidates. What draws us to side with one or the other? Most likely it's the one that says just the right things, that tugs with our emotions, something that touches home, like lowering the crime rate. One might say, I want to lower the crime rate. So you're going to say, he's got my vote, because you feel that crime has risen. You feel that he would be more of a help to you, and so therefore you believe that he's going to do more for your country. Anchoring bias is relying on information that we receive first. Say someone is diagnosed with a condition. Okay, this individual may seek a second opinion. Even if that second opinion discounts the first diagnosis, he or she may still question, doubt, maybe even refute that second diagnosis, because that first piece of information is still anchored in the individual's mind. They're still thinking about it. It's still stronger than the other diagnoses. So they are going to probably rely on that first diagnosis because it's anchored, it's instilled. Then we have the bandwagon effect. Okay, this is when an individual will adopt a belief based on how many others hold a certain belief. Like in those ads, they know that people will most likely try a product if 9 out of 10 people agree that their product works. We do this when we look at reviews before we purchase something on like Amazon or eBay. You know how it works. It'll say it has 4 out of 5 stars. We tend to want to be more interested in the products that have 5 stars versus the product that has 2 stars, even though maybe we're not looking deeper into it. We may not be looking at the fact that how many people actually reviewed the product and what their reviews actually said. So it's that bandwagon effect. It's a number of people that we are relying on to collect information from. Now, conformity is similar to the bandwagon effect. It's the tendency to develop beliefs in accordance to others' beliefs, especially those with a higher status or power. Many companies will use celebrities and people with higher power in their advertisements because they know it'll attract more buyers. And politicians may use celebrity endorsements to influence voters. All right, so these biases help us form beliefs and help us to create our own ideological bubbles, which is everything that shapes our worldview, and our filter bubbles, which we create to filter in only information that we want to hear and see that confirms our own beliefs. Now, that sounds a lot like the description of confirmation bias. Well, yes, your filter bubble is a big influence on your confirmation bias. Now, let me give you an example of my own confirmation bias that I find very difficult to steer away from. I'm partial to owning an Android smartphone. So I find Apple to be the primitive copycat to Android. Even though the Apple phone was introduced in 2007, nearly a year before the Android operating system was introduced in 2008 with the HTC Dream. But still, this is how I feel because I have developed this belief. Now, I have formed my own ideological bubble and filter bubble regarding smartphones. I don't want to really hear the great things about an Apple iPhone, nor do I want to hear the not so great things regarding the Android. I filter information as my ideologies or my developed beliefs prescribe. Is it possible for me to become unbiased regarding smartphones? Yeah, of course, because I recognize that bias now. I realize that I am partial to the Android operating system due to one or more of a combination of cognitive biases that I've talked about earlier. For instance, the anchoring bias played a huge role in this belief. I owned and became accustomed to the Android device, my first smartphone experience. So when I owned the Apple iPhone 4S, it's such a hard word to say, I still had the beliefs in my mind that Android was superior to the Apple. Because I had such a great experience with the Android device. Therefore, I really didn't give the iPhone the props that it may have deserved, because my biases toward the Apple prevented me from noting the positives or the value in the iPhone compared to the Android. Simply put, I relied on the positives of Android compared to the negatives of my experience with the Apple device. Because I am aware of my biases, I can now allow the positive information about Apple and the negative about Android into my filter bubble. I can consider the pros and cons of both types of smartphones. I can now acknowledge that Apple has some specs and features that Android may not, and vice versa. Okay, so this is another important point. We have a tendency to deny that these biases exist because we truly believe that what we think is truth or fact. What we come to believe has instilled so deeply in our minds that it becomes difficult to recognize that these perceived truths are really just information that we have come to believe. In turn, refuse to believe that there are other alternatives and answers. Once we acknowledge that, we can then open up a new door or break up that filter bubble that we have built up around us. We can then begin to see that there are rational and valid alternatives. Probably the most important first step in overcoming confirmation bias is the realization of our biases and remaining aware of their existence while researching and checking information. And a good second step maybe after realizing our biases is taking responsibility for them and admitting that we have these biases without trying to deny them. So these two steps, awareness and taking responsibility, are the closest we're going to get to compensating for our biases. We can then get beyond them to collect and share the most relevant, objective, unbiased information. And don't be too hard on yourself. Remember that bias is a part of our human cognition. When you want to research or collect information that you know requires you to be unbiased, just ask yourself how you feel about that topic. Really get to know your views and recognize any biases that you may feel, no matter how small or large they may seem, may be important to recognize enough to say to yourself, will it hinder my ability to be impartial and gain impartial results? And then, before you delve too deeply into your research, remember these two things. First, become aware of your biases. Get to know them as research comes about, and then take responsibility for them. That way you can recognize what it is, and it's there, and then when that information comes up to where you're going to want to filter it out, being aware, you're less likely to filter it out because you know that it's a bias. You say, oh, I just want to discount this information because I don't want to hear it. So once it's recognized, then you're saying, okay, I know what it is. I'm going to have to take this information in as important information. Now, these are important steps in breaking up our filter bubbles and avoiding confirmation bias. Now, if you have any questions or have any comments, maybe you'd like to share a story or two about anything that we talked about in this video, leave anything you have down in the comments below. If you like the video, leave thumbs up. If you like this video and you want to see more, please do consider subscribing and pressing the bell icon so you know when my next upload is, which I will be probably uploading more now that summer's coming and it's the end of the term. Thank goodness for that. So until next time, keep that coffee hot and those pinkies up. I will be seeing you.